Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. We have a lot to get through today, so I'll just jump straight into it. My name is Ahmad Al-Qadi. It's difficult to stand here and even begin to express and adequately illustrate the frustration that so many Canadians are having right now with the government's refusal to call for a ceasefire, refusal to acknowledge the fact that a war crime is taking place right before our eyes. All we're asking for is to prevent the further loss of innocent life in Gaza, the West Bank, and Israel. I want us to think clearly about this, that it's been 1 month since the bombardment, the indiscriminate bombing of civilians in Gaza has begun. More than 10,000 civilians have been killed indiscriminately, among them over almost 4,000 children and over 3,000 women and girls. Today, what we'd like to focus on is the vulnerable communities in Gaza. The truth is simple. You either stand with the oppressed or stand with the oppressor. And our government has blatantly abetted the indiscriminate murder of civilians. Collective punishment is a war crime. We all know it. And yet our government has unequivocally stood by it and endorsed it. So we're here today to give a much-needed platform to Canadians who represent vulnerable communities in Gaza. We must recognize that civilians are being killed. They're not merely fully able-bodied people. Many of them suffer from physical and mental disabilities, are people living with disabilities. Many of the victims are women who are pregnant with children, not to mention the horrific number that we just stated, the number of children that were murdered by a government that has openly claimed it would carry out a genocide in Gaza. How many more times will Canadians have to say enough is enough? It is clear that our Prime Minister is out of touch with Canadians who want a ceasefire, because a recent poll indicated that 77% of Canadians want a ceasefire to prevent further loss of innocent life. And these are Canadians across the board, whether they vote for the Conservative Party, Liberal Party, NDP, so on and so forth. This is every single Canadian, a vast majority that are demanding a ceasefire. So without further ado, I will call on Sarah from the Palestinian Youth Movement to deliver her remarks.
Good morning. My name is Sada, and I'm a member of the Palestinian Youth Movement. The Palestinian Youth Movement is an independent, grassroots, transnational organization of Palestinian and Arab youth in exile, advocating for Palestinian liberation from the ongoing colonization and occupation of our homelands by the Zionist State of Israel. For over a month now, we have witnessed a genocidal onslaught on Palestinians in Gaza, backed and supported by our Canadian government. Israel has massacred over 10,000 Palestinians in 31 days, of which nearly half are children. Many Palestinians were forced to flee violent bombardment in the north of the Gaza Strip, leaving over 1 million people displaced. As we stand here today, there are thousands of Palestinians stuck beneath the rubble of buildings, while those who are rescued struggle to access medical care for their injuries as necessary resources are depleted by Israel's brutal blockade. As Palestinian Canadians, our grief of witnessing the genocide of our people before our eyes is coupled with the betrayal of the Canadian government as it aids and abets this massacre. We are subjected to watch in horror as Prime Minister Trudeau continues to arm Israel to the tune of $21 million and refuses to even utter the word ceasefire. But this horror is not new to us. As Palestinians in the diaspora, we have spent generations witnessing this brutal violence brought forward by over 75 years of Israeli colonialism, ethnic cleansing, occupation, and apartheid. Last week, on November 4th, in response to the Palestinian Youth Movement's call to action, we witnessed protests in over 30 cities across Canada, including some of the largest pro-Palestine protests in the nation's history, all united in their calls for an immediate ceasefire, an immediate end to the siege on Gaza, and an end to Canadian arms sales and support to Israel. Rather than seeing a concrete response from our government to these mass mobilizations, we are witnessing increased repression against the Palestinian movement in a clear effort to suppress and silence the voices of the people. Voices from across the nation that echo a message of liberation and refuse to stand idly by while our government arms a genocide. I was asked to join today to speak to the particular struggles facing vulnerable communities as this genocide unfolds. I wanted to take this opportunity to bring attention to the plight of a forgotten vulnerable community in Palestine, one that has been repeatedly ignored by mainstream media and the international community: the plight of Palestinian political prisoners. In the past month, Israel has been collectively punishing Palestinian people, not just in Gaza, but across occupied territories. Since October 7th, Israel has kidnapped more than 5,000 Palestinians, including over 4,000 laborers from Gaza and over 1,000 Palestinians from the West Bank. This tactic of collective punishment through mass imprisonment is not new. Prior to October 7th, Israel held hostage over 5,200 Palestinian political prisoners, including children. These individuals remain in prison today, making the total number of Palestinians held hostage by Israel over 10,000. The vast majority of those arrested are held without charge or trial under administrative detention, a practice that is prohibited under international law. Others are held indefinitely under the claim that Israel holds, quote, secret evidence against them. Israel's apartheid system also enables it to criminalize Palestinian identity, imprisoning Palestinians for actions as simple as raising a Palestinian flag. Palestinian prisoners are routinely prevented from accessing any medical care. They are starved and cut off from water and electricity. Everyone who is arrested is assaulted. Many of the prisoners' limbs, hands, and legs have been broken, and they have been subjected to humiliating torture and stripped of any dignity. Even children are subjected to psychological and physical torture in Israeli jails, causing severe long-term health impacts. In the past few weeks, 25-year-old prisoner Arafat Hamdan was killed by torture in Ofer prison just 2 days after his arrest. This came 24 hours after prisoner Omar Daraghme was also tortured to death in Megiddo prison a week after he was arrested. As we stand here today, thousands of Palestinian prisoners continue to be tortured in Israeli jails. The plight of Palestinian political prisoners serves as a reminder that this violence, this brutality, this genocide extends beyond the events of the past month. It permeates every aspect of Israel's settler colonial project on Palestinian land. And while the immediate focus right now is to call for a ceasefire to stop the current carnage and genocide, we remind the world that the colonial violence that is inflicted upon Palestinians by Israel daily does not end at a ceasefire. The structural violence that allows for the imprisonment of over 10,000 Palestinians and the suffocation of 2.2 Palestinians in Gaza through a brutal blockade must be dismantled. Thank you.
Yahya Al-Agha, 11 years old. Mahmoud Alshaer, 10 years old. Khalil Alshaer, 4.5 years old. Talin Al-Agha, 2 years old. Asil Al-Agha, 13 months old. These are the names of only 5 children in my family that have fallen victim to the ongoing genocide in Gaza under the oppressive and fascist Israeli regime. Their lives were cut short, their dreams shattered, and their potential extinguished by an occupation, an oppressor, and an aggressor that has raged on for far too long. Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings be upon you. In 2:135 of the Quran it says, O believers, seek comfort in patience and prayer, for God is with those who are patient. These are the divine words by which the Palestinian people draw their strength, resilience, and power. These words embody the unyielding spirit of our cause, a spirit that will endure for generations to come. It is not just my family that has suffered as a result of the ongoing genocide in Gaza. Women and children bear the burden of the relentless storm of war crimes. The death toll of innocent children has climbed to over 4,000, a number that should shake us all to our core. Their laughter has been silenced, their futures stolen from them. These are real children. They are not numbers, and they are not a statistic. They had a right to live, and that was stripped away from them. My family and I have carried a heavy burden in this genocide, like so many others. We have lost 86 of our loved ones, and it is with a very heavy heart that I say, and counting. Each one a story of love, hope, and potential, destroyed by the fire of oppression. The world watched as the occupying forces asked people to evacuate to the south, promising safety, only to continue bombing the very places they sought refuge. Families have been torn apart, wives are widowed, and children have been orphaned. The basic necessities of life, clean water, food, and medicine, are not only in short supply, but they are practically non-existent, making daily survival a painful struggle. My uncle told us that if the occupation forces do not kill them with an airstrike, they will slowly kill them through starvation. In the face of countless calls for Palestinians to seek refuge in other countries like Jordan and Egypt, I want to convey this message to those who advocate for our ethnic cleansing. We possess a strong spirit, a spirit forged through 75 years of enduring oppression. We stand firm, resolute, and unyielding. Palestine is not only our land, it is the very essence of our identity. We shall not be uprooted from our ancestral lands, nor shall our determination waver. Our roots run deep, and our love for this land is unshakable. We remain steadfast in our yearning for liberation, unwavering in our resolve to stand our ground. Our spirit burns with the unquenchable flame, a flame that shall not be extinguished by those who seek to erase our presence. With every sunrise, we renew our commitment to Palestine, our cherished homeland. There should never be calls for relocation. Rather, the solution is simple. The calls should be for the end of the occupation. People often wonder what they might have done or said in the face of historical atrocities such as apartheid or the Bosnian genocide. So if you're watching, I urge you to consider this. You are echoing the silence you would have shown during those dark chapters of history. Canada is my home, but Gaza is my heart. And right now my heart is suffering and it is in pain. So how can I be comfortable at home? I want to direct my words to those in positions of power, including our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Minister of Foreign Affairs Melanie Joly. The blood of innocent children and countless Palestinians stain your hands. The time for action is now. Your voices can no longer remain silent, for the world watches and history is ready to pass its judgment. As a Canadian, I call on you to advocate for the immediate ceasefire and an end to the oppressive occupation of the Palestinian people. We must do better. Thank you.
Good morning. Bonjour. Je m'appelle Monia Mazigh. I am a Canadian author, academic, and human rights activist. I'm joining my voice to justice for all Canada and millions of Canadians who are calling for a ceasefire today, now. A poll was released 2 days ago and shows that 65% of Canadians support a ceasefire, either full or temporary. So why is the Canadian government resisting this call? Why is our Canadian government siding with Israel instead of listening to its own citizens? Why is Canada contradicting its own policies? The right of Israel to defend itself does not and would never be justified with the indiscriminate killing of innocent women and children. In May 2009, after the Israeli military operation on Gaza, Operation Cast Lead, I joined a humanitarian delegation with American organization Code Pink. The purpose of our delegation was to try to break the siege that started already in 2007 on Gaza and never was lifted since as a collective punishment for Palestinians for voting for Hamas. I would like to read some excerpts from my diaries while I visited Gaza. May 31st, 2009. The program for today is to visit the northern Gaza Strip. We passed through Beach Camp, a highly dense camp of refugees. All these refugees are not originally from Gaza. They lost their homes and land after the Nakba of 1948. I saw many factories completely destroyed. The region is named Atatra. It was so affected by the last war. People are still living in tents. From the northern part of Gaza, we can see Ashkelon, what the Palestinians used to name Al-Majdal, part of Israel now. Our first stop was the American International School. The idea to create an American school was apparently initiated by Yasser Arafat. He wanted to build a school that would attract foreign investment in the region, teach the American curriculum, but the building was completely flattened by the IDF. And when we went off our bus to see the damages from close, we were very surprised by the burning smell, a certain smell similar to sulfur. The Israeli border can be seen from the American International School. Jabalia camp is the largest camp in Gaza. It holds about, at that time, of course, 150,000 refugees, 10% of the population. Not far from there, we passed by a destroyed cement factory, Abu Edda cement factory. Beit Lahia school, an elementary school partially destroyed during the war. Nearby, we can see the tents were set for families who were displaced. No houses have been rebuilt yet, as Gaza still lives under siege. No building material are allowed to enter through any border. I can still see some beautiful houses, especially near the beach, some of them unfinished, but some of other completed. The houses look very big from outside, with beige stone covering all the walls, and the red roof giving the impression of a nice summer cottage. The graffiti is all over the city, painted on public walls, on houses and stores. The picture of young men, most likely died as martyrs, are pasted everywhere. The majority of people in Beit Lahia are local people and not refugees. This is the end of my diary here. What we are seeing today is not how different from what happened in 2008 and 2009. The only difference is that the number of civilians killed the number of civilians killed is so far 10 times far worse than the arms used today, time more lethal. In this assault on Gaza, the fate of Palestinian women, with which their children bear most of the cost and damage, is completely out of the radar of many feminists. Despite some strong feminist voices who are not intimidated, like Judy Butler, who stated a genocide is taking place with indiscriminate bombing, killing, starvation, the majority of intellectual and feminists are silent. And what is worse, sometimes they are justifying the ongoing massacre, as if the fate of 52,000 pregnant women in Gaza does not matter, as if the statistics of one child killed in 10 minutes is meaningless. How can our feminist commitment and policies be coherent with what is going on in Gaza today? How can we remain silent and forget our feminist principles when it comes to Palestinian women? Or is it easier to defend Iranian women because we despise their government, and harder to defend the Palestinian women because they are bombed by our friend and ally? These double standards used to take long time to be discovered, but with today's technology, the accessibility to information, and the interconnectedness of our world, the king is naked. We need to quickly dress up and stand up for the rights of Palestinian women and children right now. A ceasefire right now.
Bismillah, in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, I greet you with the greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Yazan Nasreddin. I'm the regional manager for Islamic relief. I'm here to talk about the humanitarian aspect that's happening right now in Gaza. The war in Gaza, and of course it's escalated now to the West Bank, had affected multiple sectors. Health, economy, water, so many sectors have been affected. As of yesterday, there is 10,000, the death toll reached 10,328, including 4,237 children and 2,719 women. All of this, as my colleagues said, these are not numbers, these are real people, loved ones. There's 25,965 injured, out of which 8,067 children and 5,960 women. And injured doesn't mean you get a scratch. Injured means you lose a leg, you lose a arm, you lose an eye, etc. 192 mosques have been damaged, and 56 mosques have been completely destroyed. 3 churches has been targeted. 192 medical and healthcare facilities were damaged, and 32 ambulances were destroyed, while 113 healthcare institutions suffered significant damage, and 16 hospitals and 32 health centers have been taken out of service completely. 222,000 residence units have been affected, with 10,000 buildings completely destroyed, and 40,000 residential units completely destroyed. The Israeli occupation destroyed also 222 schools, inflicting various types of damage to schools and their buildings. 60 schools have been taken out of service, and since the beginning of the aggression, also 88 government buildings have been destroyed. There is no power, no fuel, no gas, no food, just remnants of internet, no water in Gaza since the war started. Aid items cannot reach because of security issues and lack of fuel. 1.8 million people are now food insecure, with the power shut down, hampering people's ability to cook meals and even for bakeries to produce bread. Gaza is facing an unprecedented health crisis as well. That risks outbreaks of deadly infectious diseases like cholera, because water and sanitation services have completely broken down. All of 5 Gaza's water treatment centers have been affected, and most of its 65 sewage pumping stations have been forced to close. Untreated sewage is now being discharged in the sea, and some areas solid waste is accumulating in the streets. Clean water has virtually run out. Some people are being forced to drink from wells. The World Health Organization recommends one person to get 50 to 100 liters of water, and we're far away from that. Overcrowding is a major concern. More than 557 people are sheltering in 92 UNRWA facilities. There is no privacy, there is no space. This is generating a lot of health and safety hazards. Thousands of cases of acute respiratory infections, diarrhea and chickenpox have been reported among people taking refuge at UNRWA shelters. We don't want another COVID, we don't want another mass infection going around. Hospitals are coping with these diseases. Job losses in the economy in Gaza It's costing Palestinian economy 16 million per day. 182 jobs have been lost in Gaza. That's equivalent to 61% of total employment. Also, 200,008 jobs have been lost in the West Bank, which is equal to 24% of total employment. The economy is suffering. On average, hospitals receive one wounded person every minute, and 15 bodies every hour. 6 children and 5 women are killed every hour on average. Almost 70% of Gaza's population has been forcibly displaced. 30,000 tons of explosives have been used by Israel in this war. Half of the hospitals and 62% of primary health care centers are effectively running out of service. Last but not least, I would say Gaza right now, with all its, last but not least, people are not getting bread. There is only one bakery that is active, it's suffering from cuts of flour. I'll end with this. There is no safe place in Gaza. Even safe corridors are not safe. We urgently, Allah Azza wa Jal said in His book, God, the Lord said in His book, وَمَنْ أَحْيَاهَا فَكَأَنَّمَا أَحْيَا النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا. If you save one soul, it's as you saved the whole mankind. This is from the Lord in the Quran. So I asked, please, everybody, especially governments, international community, to call for an active ceasefire while we still can. If we're late on this, then I don't think there will be anybody to call a ceasefire for. It's just trouble, skulls, and more death and misery. They said never again. I hope they said the truth. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you.
We'll now take questions.
Oui, bonjour. J'aurais une question en français, s'il vous plaît. Le Premier ministre Justin Trudeau, là, juste il y a quelques minutes, s'est fait poser des questions à ce sujet. Il a dit on voit la mort, la dévastation, la destruction des familles. Il a dit j'ai pas besoin de décrire l'horreur. C'est pour ça qu'on appelle à une pause humanitaire. Donc, il maintient qu'il veut des pauses humanitaires pour permettre la libération des otages de part et d'autre, l'acheminement d'aide humanitaire. Je sais que vous avez probablement déjà répondu à ces questions, mais pourquoi une ou des pauses humanitaires ou une trêve, ce n'est pas suffisant à votre avis?
Tout d'abord, ce n'est pas suffisant parce que Israël n'a même pas répondu à ces pauses humanitaires. Et quand il y a eu quelques camions qui sont rentrés au Gaza, il y en avait quelques-uns. Apparemment, avant, c'était 400 camions qui rentraient par jour à la bande de Gaza. Maintenant, quand il y a eu quelques petites pauses, on avait vu quelques camions, une dizaine apparemment. Donc, je pense que c'est vraiment insuffisant. C'est un bon peut-être pas dans la bonne direction, mais c'est très 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 loin de l'état que mes collègues viennent de décrire aujourd'hui, avec les pertes humaines, avec l'absence de nourriture, d'eau. Donc je pense que M. Trudeau a beaucoup de travail à faire, à convaincre son ami Benjamin Netanyahou, non seulement à accepter même le principe de ces pauses humanitaires, mais d'exiger un cessez-le-feu. Je pense que tout le monde de bonne foi, tout le monde qui a un cœur dans ce monde, qui ne veut pas l'histoire se répéter, accepterait l'idée très, très minimale d'un cessez-le-feu.
La médiation que fait le Qatar, qui se poursuit et qui a eu des derniers développements, est-ce que ça vous donne un peu d'espoir d'obtenir ce cessez-le-feu?
Oui, peut-être aujourd'hui on a tellement peu de choses, d'actes pour revoir l'espoir, pour regagner l'espoir. Je pense que c'est quelque chose qu'il faudrait encourager. Il faudrait que le gouvernement canadien rentre dans ces négociations, appuie explicitement ces négociations. Il ne faut pas être timide, il ne faut pas rester en arrière et dire simplement on a besoin de pause humanitaire. On a besoin de négociations, oui, pour libérer les otages, mais aussi on a des négociations pour mettre de la pression sur le gouvernement israélien pour accepter un cessez-le-feu et pour retourner à la table des négociations pour lever le siège sur Gaza qui dure depuis maintenant presque d'une vingtaine d'années et pour que l'occupation cesse et pour que les Palestiniens puissent retrouver leur liberté.
Il y a quelques jours, là, M. Trudeau a dit qu'il fallait se questionner sur le coût de la justice. Il a dit ça en français, il a dit qu'il comprenait qu'Israël tentait d'avoir la libération des otages de leur côté, comme il veut la libération des autres otages. Il se questionne, il a dit qu'il faut se questionner sur le coût de la justice. Est-ce que ça doit être que tous les Palestiniens souffrent? Il a posé cette question-là de façon ouverte. Est-ce que vous voyez ça comme une évolution un peu dans son discours?
Je ne pense pas qu'il faut traiter M. Trudeau comme un petit garçon pour lui donner des bonbons ou pour lui donner des stickers à chaque fois qu'il fasse quelque chose qui finalement n'est pas extraordinaire. Je pense qu'il faudrait juste que M. Trudeau assume sa position en tant que Premier ministre de tous les Canadiens et non pas seulement l'allié d'Israël. Je pense qu'il y a, on l'a bien dit, mes collègues et moi, il y a 71%, c'est un sondage fait ici au Canada qui a demandé qu'il y ait un cessez-le-feu temporaire même ou permanent. Et donc, que M. Trudeau dise que que le coût de la justice est élevé et tout cela, moi je pense que ça c'est du baratin, avec tous mes respects pour le Premier ministre, et je pense que le temps aujourd'hui ce n'est pas aux mots, le temps c'est aux actions. Et la première action à faire, c'est de demander, commencer un cessez-le-feu dès aujourd'hui, parce que quand M. Trudeau est en train de parler, il y a des enfants qui sont tués par les bombardements d'Israël. Donc là, il faut toujours se rappeler que c'est une urgence.
Okay, maybe I'll just ask a question in English, whoever wants to intervene. So just about what Mr. Trudeau said a moment ago, he had a scrum with some journalists and he said, well, of course we see death, devastation, horror. He says he doesn't need to describe horror and destruction of families. And he says that is why his government is asking for humanitarian pause or pauses, as he previously said. I know that you all probably already spoke about that, but can you just say, because that's what he said this morning, why a pause or many pauses is not the solution for you and it's not going far enough?
I think we'd like to ask a question to Justin Trudeau. What is the purpose of a humanitarian pause? Is it to temporarily pause the bombing to provide aid and then continue bombing Gazans and Palestinians in Gaza? Beyond this, how does a humanitarian pause address the root causes of this violence? The root causes, which we know, are occupation, our colonization, our apartheid, that need to be addressed. On top of this, I would pose to Justin Trudeau that he has power to end arms sales to Israel. And under international law, we have obligations to sell arms in a humanitarian and moral way, which might be impossible, but for now, why are we arming a genocide? That is my question to Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau has the power to end the Canada-Israel Free Trade Agreement to ensure that Israel acts in the way that we want it to. Justin Trudeau has the power to end the $21 million in arms trade to Israel to ensure that Israel stops this genocide. Justin Trudeau's call for a humanitarian pause is a weak attempt to show himself as a humanitarian while still aiding and abetting the genocide of Palestinians. And so we won't be fooled by the idea of a humanitarian pause as though the Liberal government right now is trying to be humanitarian when we know that they are arming, funding, and supporting this genocide. And we ask for a ceasefire because a ceasefire is actually a end of bombardment, not a temporary end of bombardment, and we're asking beyond a ceasefire. We're asking for the end of the siege, we're asking for the end of occupation, because these things also need to be addressed, or else the cycle of violence will continue happening. Thank you.
Merci. Merci, thank you.
This concludes the press conference. Merci.